Discover how one brave woman changed her life forever in the Millionaire's mansion. An amazing night. Sarah had never felt out of place until that evening. The grand mansion loomed over her like a castle of unattainable dreams. Glittering chandeliers, the sound of vibrant laughter, and glamorous people draped in silk and satin made her stomach churn. This night wasn't about her. It was about raising funds for veterans, a cause dear to her heart. But as she brushed her fingers through her unremarkable dress, she felt the weight of judgment in every corner, every glance. In a sea of sparkling glass and polished smiles, Sarah stood amidst the whispers of the lesser fortunate. While serving pancakes to families at the local diner felt humbling yet fulfilling, here she was serving a rare purpose in a different, distant world. If only they knew the grit it took for her to provide for Jake and her aging father, they would realize she wore her struggle like a badge of honor, not a mark of shame. As her thoughts swirled around her head, Sarah squeezed through the crowd and found refuge in a lavishly decorated hallway. The walls were adorned with portraits of grandeur, but amid the beauty, she spotted a torn family photo abandoned on a table. It was a glimpse into someone's life, an unfiltered moment forever captured. The sight stirred a melancholy in her. It felt familiar, echoing her own memories of laughter-filled kitchen tables and the scars of sacrifices made for love. Just then, the millionaire owner of the mansion approached, his face a blend of curiosity and impatience. "What are you doing back here?" he snapped, eyebrows furrowed. The pulse in her chest quickened. Was she less deserving of space because of her job at the diner? Was it her frayed shoes not worthy of this grand setting? "Trying to remember what it's like to feel valued," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than her heart. Their tense exchange pushed against the boundaries of class and expectation. "This gala is for the brave," he said, gesturing at the bright lights of wealth surrounding them. But Sarah saw past the surefire bravado in his words. The veiled fears of not being enough resonated with her own. "Bravery isn't wealth. It's doing what you must every day." The words rolled off her tongue like honey, sweet but heavy with truth. She could feel eyes turning, catching snippets of their heated exchange. The murmurs built around her, a swell of acknowledgement she hadn't expected. The other guests shifted uneasily, perhaps for the first time realizing their insular bubble. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can top a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference.
Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The conversation ignited something within her, a voice, a purpose. Sarah's breath caught as she realized she had the power to challenge the status quo. She watched faces, each moment like a snapshot. A young woman in a sequined gown, a man in a tailored suit, all caught off guard by her words. They seemed to recognize the human behind the struggle, a connection that transcended the silk and gold of their environment. As the clock ticked down to the gala's end, Sarah felt a surge of resolve. She stood at the precipice of a new understanding for herself, the mansion owner, and the audience surrounding them. Just as she braced herself to deliver a final, passionate challenge that would finally break through social barriers, chaos erupted. A commotion that left the room breathless, her journey momentarily paused. What would come next for Sarah? And could she finally change not just her life, but the perception of worth in her hometown? The shouts and gasps echoed through the grand hall as Sarah struggled to comprehend what was happening. A scene unfolded before her, chaos wrapping around the glittering veneer of the gala. A burst of whispers rippled through the crowd. Some pointed, others covered their mouths in shock. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of a figure pushing through the throng, a security guard rushing toward a man wearing a disheveled suit. The man's wild, pleading eyes darted around as if searching for something, someone. The stark contrast between his despair and the polished guests was jarring. "Stop! Please, don't!" he yelled, desperate. The words hung in the air, thick with anguish. Sarah felt a tug at her instinct. She knew that feeling of desperation all too well. Her heart raced as she moved closer, feeling the heat of 100 curious eyes on her. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this man? Why was he here? Just as the guard reached for him, the man stumbled, nearly collapsing. I'm here for my brother. He fought for our country. I need to speak with someone. His voice was raw, breaking, filled with a pain that was nearly palpable. The tension thickened. It was unnerving in a room meant for celebration. People shifted uncomfortably, faces painted with a mix of intrigue and disgust. No one was willing to step forward. Was it a sick joke or a desperate plea for help? Sarah could feel the energy shift around her. It was like a tide. Some swept backward, while a few lingered, wanting to witness a spectacle. But she couldn't stand by any longer. This man, so lost and desperate, reminded her too much of the struggles she faced just to keep her family afloat. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "Someone needs to help him," she shouted, her voice slicing through the confusion. There it was, the clarity of her determination. If not now, when? With a shaking hand, Sarah stepped forward, nudging past the guard. "What's your brother's name?" she asked, locking her gaze on the grieving face of the stranger. "Tommy. He's in the hospital. They said he might not make it. I thought I could find someone here, someone who could—" He choked on his words, tears brimming in his eyes. The crowd suddenly felt smaller. The noise around them began to fade as realization washed over her like a tide. "Wait here. I can help you," she said, turning back to the mansion owner, who had silently observed from the sidelines, his smug expression fading into concern. He hesitated but nodded, his sharp gaze now more compassionate. "Call someone. Make sure he gets the help he needs," he said. A ripple of changes infused the room. Guests exchanged glances, some moved forward, whispering about the veteran, some gazing upon Sarah with newfound respect. It was no longer about wealth, it was about humanity. As she wrapped her arm around the distraught man, guiding him away from the chaos, Sarah felt something shift within herself, a dawning realization that truly defined bravery. It was not just about standing up for herself, but about standing up for others, for those whose voices were lost in the panic of pretense. But just as the atmosphere began to settle and intentions shifted, a police siren blared outside, freezing everyone in place. What had started with a plea for help was now spiraling into something far beyond her control. As the thrumming pulse of the moment swelled with uncertainty, Sarah stood ready to fight for not just the man beside her, but for every story that had been silenced in the shadows of judgment. What she had started that night in the mansion was only the beginning. Would the world still listen as the truth unfolded right before them? Light from outside flickered through the grand hall windows as the police lights illuminated the chaos. Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty increase, pressing against her chest. She instinctively tightened her grip on the man's arm, grounding him and herself, both vulnerable in that moment. "What's happening?" The man's voice was barely a whisper, filled with confusion and dread. His eyes darted, searching not just for answers, but for hope. "They'll help," Sarah assured him, though she wasn't sure who they were anymore. The crowd that surrounded them began to spread out, creating an awkward barrier between Sarah, the man, and the swarm of suited guests who had grown uncomfortably quiet. What had once been an opulent party now resembled a living tableau of fear and empathy. From behind her, an authoritative voice broke the silence. "What's the problem here?" A uniformed officer stepped into view, his imposing figure contrasting sharply with the nervousness in the air. The security guard who had initially intercepted the man gestured toward them, the shift in the crowd marking the urgency of the situation. "This veteran needs help." "His brother is in a hospital," Sarah spoke out, infusing her words with strength, hoping someone would hear the urgency beneath her anxiety. "Please, they need to get in touch with the right people." The officer regarded her for a moment. Something in her expression must have registered. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Sarah," she replied, feeling the gravity of the moment weigh heavily. "And this is—" She hesitated, almost forgetting that she hadn't even caught his name yet. "Ben," the man beside her said, his voice shaking but a spark of determination flickering in his eyes. "Ben and Tommy need immediate assistance," Sarah pressed, her heart racing as she shot a look back at the retreating crowd. For every pair of eyes that watched, a story of indifference wrapped around them like an insidious fog. "He fought for us. We can't ignore him now." The officer shifted his stance, acknowledging her fervor, and radioed for backup. "Stay with him," he added, the edges of his stern demeanor softening just a touch. The tension became a tangible force that stretched throughout the hall. Others started to gather closer, perhaps moved by Ben's plea or Sarah's insistence. One woman stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "I have a brother who works in the hospital," she introduced, her voice calming like a gentle rain. "I can call him. Let's get the ball rolling." As the woman fumbled for her phone, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Hope was like a flickering candle, lighting the way through their darkness. It wouldn't be easy, nothing ever was, but at that moment it felt possible. "Thank you," Ben said, his voice breaking. "You all have no idea how much this means to me." "And to every brother and sister who deserves our help," Sarah added softly, the depth of her words resonating through the crowd. This wasn't just about Ben or Tommy anymore. It was about a community recognizing its strength to unite in the face of fear. As the night moved forward and the sirens began to fade, hope intermingled with anxiety, flooding the space like a soft melody that refused to die out. Each passing moment strengthened Sarah's resolve, a seismic shift from the fear that once held her captive. But just as the feeling of unity began to coalesce, a shouting match erupted from the outskirts of the gala. A new figure emerged, frantic and accusatory. "You don't understand," he yelled, drawing everyone's attention. "This is far more complicated than you know." Caught between Ben's desperation and the chaos unfolding again, Sarah sensed her resolve teetering on the edge. What secrets lay hidden beneath this night's facade, ready to unfold like a tightly wound story waiting to unravel? The answers could either propel them forward or pull them down into an even deeper abyss. Would Sarah dare to find out? "I can't stand it," the newcomer shouted, his voice cracking under the pressure.
Everyone turned, drawn into the palpable tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Who are you?" A man from the crowd stepped forward, trying to assert some control. "What's so complicated? We're trying to help." The stranger took a deep breath, his eyes wild with desperation. "You don't know the whole story," he replied, shaking his head. "Tommy isn't just some victim. He's tangled in something larger than any of us." Sarah's stomach churned. The words hit her like cold water, stirring doubt. "What do you mean?" she asked, searching the man's face for clarity, hoping to detect a sign that he was overreacting. "The accident wasn't just an accident," he insisted, his voice lowering. "There's something they're not telling anyone. Something about why he was there. It's connected to his service." Ben's grip on Sarah's arm tightened, his knuckles whitening. "What are you saying? My brother was just trying to make ends meet." The newcomer nodded gravely. "Yeah, but I saw things. Things I can't explain without sounding crazy. Just trust me. If you reach out to the wrong people, it could put all of you at risk." Silence swirled around them, heavy and thick. Sarah felt a knot of dread form in her stomach. What were they getting into? A woman beside her whispered, "What could be worse than this?" her voice trembling with uncertainty. Before the newcomer could respond, the officer cleared his throat, forcing the attention back to him. "Let's keep this civil," he said, his authority cutting through the tension. "If there's truth to what you're saying, it's best discussed somewhere private." Ben turned to Sarah, fear flickering in his eyes. What if he's right? What if we open a door that shouldn't be opened? "Or what if we ignore him and regret it?" she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "We can't back down now." The officer stared at the stranger, his patience waning. "If you have information, now is the time to share it. We can't help Tommy if we don't know what we're facing." The man hesitated, glancing around the room. He took a deep breath. "Fine, but you can't go to the police, not yet. Let me explain what I know and what's at stake." As he spoke, Sarah felt her heart race. The air crackled with uncertainty and the weight of unsaid secrets. Was she ready to dive into whatever this man was about to reveal? A part of her wanted to cling to their fragile hope, while another sensed the dark undertow hauling them into dangerous waters. Ben looked at her, anxiety etched on his face. "What do we do?" "Let's hear him out," Sarah said, trying to quell her own fears. "But we have to be careful. This could change everything." The strangers in the hall, once merely background silhouettes in their drama, became real people here on the edge, waiting with bated breath for the next revelation.
Then, just as they were about to step deeper into this unfolding mystery, a call came through the officer's radio, slicing through the heavy tension. "We have a situation. Officer down. Backup needed at the east entrance." Gasps swept through the crowd, eyes darting toward the exit as panic rippled through. Time seemed to freeze, leaving Sarah staring at Ben, the gravity of their next move weighing heavily between them. What was the connection between Tommy's accident and this chaos?
As sirens flooded the air outside, Sarah knew that whatever happened next, they were about to find themselves entwined in something far larger than they ever anticipated. Would they find the truth before it pulled them under? The officer's radio crackled again, pulling everyone from their thoughts. The urgency in the officer's voice sent a wave of panic through the crowd. All available units, respond. We need immediate assistance. Sarah grabbed Ben's arm tighter, instinctively feeling the urgency charging the atmosphere. Fear washed over their faces as disbelief took root. What do we do? He hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. Stay calm, she urged, though her heart raced in unison with the commotion outside. We need to focus on hurting people, not panic. The stranger stepped closer, his eyes darting toward the source of the chaos outside. This could all be connected, he muttered, voice strained. I don't know how yet, but there's a reason Tommy was involved. But how can we help him if we don't even understand the situation? Sarah questioned, her voice faltering, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The crowd began to shift, frightened murmurs mixing with the distant sounds of sirens. The air felt electric, charged with fear and desperation. Sarah turned back to the stranger, ready to press for answers. Understanding was their only option. I have something I shouldn't have. It's dangerous, but it's the key, he said, lowering his voice to a near whisper. I saw something at the crash that night, something that could change everything you think you know about Tommy. What did you see? Ben pressed, tension simmering just below the surface. The stranger hesitated, vulnerability breaching his wildness for a moment. They were there. They were watching him. Tommy knew something, and they didn't want him to tell anyone. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She needed to absorb his words fully, to understand the implications. Watching him. Who? Just others like him. They don't play nice. They know about the accident, and they want to silence the truth, he replied, gripping the edges of a nearby table as if it would anchor him amidst the chaos. Voices around them grew louder, people shifting uneasily in the hall. Sarah noticed a woman breaking down near the entrance, tears streaming down her face. Panic was a virus spreading through the crowd. Listen, Sarah said suddenly, her voice cutting through the storm of fear.
We need to leave this place. If there's a connection between all these events, we're in danger here. We need to regroup, find a safer space, and figure this out. Ben nodded, a determined spark igniting in his eyes. Let's go, and we bring the stranger with us. If he knows more, he's a part of this too. Wait, the officer stepped forward, shaking his head. You can't just walk into the fray. It's too dangerous out there. We need to wait for more units. But Sarah couldn't wait, no longer. Ignoring the appointed authority, she turned to the crowd. Listen, if you want answers, you need to stick together. We need to move. We need to act. With hearts pounding, they filed toward the exit. As the sirens continued their relentless wail, the realization swept over them that they were now all part of something they didn't yet understand. Uncertainty and fear brushed against the promise of the truth, beckoning them forward into incomprehensible depths. What's our next move? Ben asked, glancing back at the stranger, whose wide eyes belied the severe weight of their mission. As they stepped outside, the chaos enveloped them. The night sky was illuminated by flashing lights, casting shifting shadows against their faces. Sarah's heart raced harder than ever. Were they about to uncover a truth that would change everything? Or would they plunge deeper into danger from which they couldn't escape? In that moment of uncertainty, a figure emerged from a nearby alleyway, their presence sending a chill down her spine. Who were they, and what did they want? Stay close, Sarah urged, the sense of danger clinging to them like a second skin. The figure stepped forward, and what they revealed could alter their fate forever. The figure moved closer, shadows dancing as the bright lights flickered overhead. Sarah's heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She could barely make out the outline. A hood obscured the person's features, but the confidence in their stride spoke volumes. Who are you? Sarah's voice sliced through the tension, steady yet fragile. The figure paused, tilting their head slightly, so the light caught a glimmer of their eyes. I'm here to help, but you need to trust me. Their voice was low, almost soothing, yet laced with urgency. Trust? Why should we? Ben shot back, defensively. He instinctively moved slightly in front of Sarah, ready to protect her. The stranger beside them, seemingly as lost in this moment as they were, narrowed his eyes. We don't have the luxury of choice. Whatever's going on, it's bigger than all of us. If we don't work together, we're all finished. The figure extended a gloved hand. I know where Tommy is. If you follow me, I can lead you to him, but you have to keep up. Lead us where? Sarah pressed,
the knot in her stomach tightening. "How do you even know, Tommy?" "Because I was there," the figure replied, urgency swelling in their tone. "That night, I saw what happened, and it's not just a simple accident."
There are powers at play here that want to keep it hidden. Ben glanced at Sarah, uncertainty clouding his features. She felt him searching for reassurance. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, placing faith in the unknown. "Okay, we'll follow you." As they moved down the street, the cacophony of sirens faded behind them, replaced by a spine-tingling silence. The figure slipped skillfully through shadows, taking turns that the others struggled to follow. Every corner felt like a leap into the unknown. "What do you know?" Sarah demanded, trying to steady the sudden churn of anxiety within her. "If Tommy's in danger, what are we supposed to do?" The figure looked back. "There's a third party involved, someone who stands to gain everything if Tommy stays quiet. They've been watching him for a long time. They'll do anything to keep him from speaking out." "Why should we believe you?" Ben pressed, his protective instinct flaring again. "You could be leading us into a trap." The figure paused, revealing their face for a brief moment. A flash of vulnerability crossed their eyes. "Because I want the truth just as much as you do. My brother was affected by it too, and I can't let it happen again." A jolt of empathy surged through Sarah. There were layers to this danger, threads connecting them all in ways they couldn't fully perceive yet. But now they shared a common goal, a dangerous thread binding them together. They arrived at a dimly lit warehouse tucked between two towering buildings, its entrance hidden behind a cluster of dumpsters. The figure glanced around cautiously, ensuring they weren't being followed. "This is where I last saw him," the figure said, their voice barely a murmur. "But I can't go in. I've drawn too much attention already." "We can't just leave him," Ben protested, glancing at Sarah. Sarah took another deep breath, grounding herself. "What if we split up? I can go inside while you keep watch. If anything goes wrong, you'll be right there." Ben's eyes widened. "Are you crazy?" But Sarah's resolve hardened. "We're in this together. The only way we can save Tommy is by acting fast." The figure nodded, eyes pleading with Sarah. "Be careful. They are always watching." Fear rippled through her, but so did fierce determination. Steeling herself, she stepped toward the entrance, her heart pounding louder than the chaos that had erupted just hours ago. What lay ahead? Would she discover the truth, or was she walking straight into danger? As Sarah stepped into the dark, heavy silence of the warehouse, a sudden crash echoed from within. She froze, the weight of reality crashing down around her. What had she just gotten herself into? Would she uncover the truth, or was it already too late? Keep it together, Sarah, she murmured under her breath. Kneading her palms together, she took a tentative step forward, her breath hitching when the crash echoed again. It sounded like metal striking concrete, harsh, jarring. "Tommy," she called softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Silence fell after her words, thickening the tension. There was no response, only the distant hum of a fluorescent light flickering above. Adrenaline coursed through her as she moved deeper into the warehouse, the faint clinking of her shoes against the floor intensifying her awareness. Every footfall felt like a declaration of bravery, each step further from safety, yet closer to Tommy wherever he might be. "Focus," she reminded herself again. "You can do this." As she rounded a corner, the dim light revealed a makeshift table piled high with documents and a flickering computer screen. It felt out of place, almost surreal in this forgotten space. Papers fluttered like captured birds, held by the weight of secrets. She stepped closer, her heart racing with a mix of fear and hope. What had Tommy stumbled upon? A sudden movement caught her eye. A shadowy figure darted behind a stack of crates. Her pulse quickened. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. No answer came, but the tension in the air began to pulse. This wasn't just about finding Tommy anymore. There was something more sinister lurking in the corners of this place. Ben's face flickered in her mind, and she thought of their previous conversation, the uncertainty in his eyes. They were in this together, but now it felt like an impossible weight rested on her shoulders alone. "I need to find you, Tommy," she said softly, allowing a hint of vulnerability to seep through. "Please, show yourself." As she reached the computer screen, her fingertips brushed against a nearby document. She pulled it toward her, and the words leaped out like flames. "Extraction plans for Aral Industries postponed. Operation versus whistleblower in progress. Eliminate." Every syllable hit her, cold as ice. This was bigger than she had imagined. The truth was here, woven into plans that went far beyond her understanding. A sickening realization dawned. Tommy wasn't just in danger because he knew something. He was part of a much larger scheme, and someone was willing to go to extreme lengths to keep their secrets hidden. Suddenly, the distant sound of footsteps echoed from behind her. Sarah's heart lurched. She ducked behind the table, the weight of dread tightening around her chest. Peeking around the edge, she saw two figures enter through the entrance, a man in a dark suit and another sporting tattoos that peeked above his collar. "Did you check the back?" The man's voice was smooth but laced with an underlying menace. The tattooed man shook his head. "Not yet, but the boss wants this done tonight. We can't leave anyone who's hands." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Something exploded in her mind. They were looking for Tommy. She clutched the document tightly, fear radiating through her. She had to warn Ben. But how could she get out without being seen? Her thoughts raced, while outside the warehouse, the winds picked up, a restless energy foreshadowing an approaching storm. The sound of rain began to patter against the roof, a reminder that time was running out. As the footsteps drew dangerously close, Sarah prepared to make her move. Would she risk it all for Tommy and the truth? The choice lay heavy before her. And then, from the shadows, she felt a presence. A familiar voice whispered in her mind. It's now or never. With the urgency echoing in her heart, she made her decision. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find a way to escape? Or was the storm just beginning? The shadows around Sarah felt heavier as she crouched behind the table, heart racing like a wild horse. Every sound, the rustle of paper, the creak of the floor, made her flinch. She had to be calm, she had to think clearly. It was now or never. Taking a deep breath, she glanced at the document again. Panic clawed at her lungs when she thought of what those men might do to Tommy if they found him first. They weren't just after documents. There was blood on the line. With her heart pounding, she gathered her courage. She could hear their voices growing closer, their conversation sharpening the edge of her fear. "We need to split," the man in the suit said. "You check this area. I'll head to the office." That was her opening. Sarah slipped from behind the table, her movements quick but silent, like a whisper on the wind. She pressed herself against the wall, inching toward the nearest exit, praying for every moment that they wouldn't spot her. Suddenly, the fluorescent light flickered more violently, casting erratic shadows that danced across the musty floor. She hesitated, caught between her path to freedom and the desperate urge to find Tommy. But she couldn't let herself be distracted. He needed her to act.
Just as she reached for the warehouse door, a sudden clatter pulled her focus. The tattooed man had knocked over a stack of crates, and the crash echoed through the silence like a gunshot. Both men turned sharply toward the sound, their eyes sharp as knives. "Oh no," Sarah whispered, panic flooding her veins. Running wasn't an option, not yet. She tucked beneath a workbench, the coolness of the metal grounding her as she listened. She could hear their outlines shifting closer, their voices low and menacing, but sharp enough for her heart to catch every word. "We can't miss him," said the suit, his tone a mixture of irritation and urgency. "We'll search every inch of this place until we find him. He has information we cannot allow to circulate." The tattooed man grinned darkly. "You think he's still here? Let's make sure of it."
Fear gripped her as she remained motionless under the bench, attempting to silence every erratic heartbeat echoing in her ears. She could be their next target if they discovered her. But she couldn't just sit and hide. For Tommy's sake, she needed to know where they were heading next. If Tommy was caught, his life would hang in the balance, and she couldn't bear the thought of living with that weight of failing him. The men turned away, heading toward the back of the warehouse. This was her chance. Sarah slid out from her hiding spot, every muscle tensed with the thrill of fear and adrenaline coursing through her body. Glancing back one last time, she bit her lip and steeled herself for what lay ahead. With her mind racing over the words she had read, she saw a door at the back that led into a narrow corridor. It might lead her to Tommy. She pushed the door open slightly, the cold air rushing to greet her, while the rain outside pounded against the rooftop in a symphony of urgency. The corridor stretched into darkness, swirling with the unknown. She took a step forward, every instinct telling her to turn back, but then the thought of Tommy's face overtook her fear. "I'm coming," she whispered into the heat of the moment, as if her voice could bridge the distance between them. With every step she took deeper into the corridor, the stakes rose. She could hear them closing in on her, voices faint yet firm, as if they were just on the other side of a fragile wall. She could go back, escape, and warn Ben. But what if Tommy needed her? What was waiting for her at the end of this tunnel? Would she find her brother, or would she uncover secrets that could shatter everything they had fought for? As her heart thudded louder with each second, she could almost hear it call her name, urging her to make a choice. The taste of rain lingered in the air, and she pressed on into the unforgiving shadows. What truths lay hidden in this darkness, and who would emerge from it unscathed? The corridor was as cold as fear itself, wrapping around Sarah like a thick blanket. Each step felt heavier than the last, echoing in the stillness. She strained her ears, listening for the subtle sounds of pursuit, but all she could hear was the distant pounding of rain above. It became a haunting melody, each drop a countdown drawing her closer to an unknown fate. With every shadow cast by the flickering lights, she imagined the horrors Tommy could be facing. Her mind raced through the worst scenarios. She couldn't let that happen. She had to find him. Pushing deeper into the hallway, she occasionally stopped to press her back against the damp, peeling walls. Light seeped through cracks, flickering over her face like ghosts searching for warmth. From the far end, she glimpsed a flicker of light that pierced the darkness. A doorway. Heart racing, she moved toward it, urgency burning in her chest. Suddenly, a loud voice shouted from behind her. He couldn't have gone far. "Check the corridor." Panic surged through her, and she quickened her pace, the echo of their footsteps behind her growing nearer. She was just moments away from what she hoped was a way forward, but now fear clawed at her heels. Reaching the doorway, she paused for a brief moment. If these men found her, what would they do? Part of her wanted to run back, to escape and regroup with Ben. Another part knew that the chance to save Tommy was now, or it might never come again. Steeling her nerves, she slipped through the door. The room beyond was small and dimly lit. Desks and chairs were scattered about, covered in a layer of dust, abandoned like hopes left to decay. The light she had seen came from a small window, barely illuminating the space. As her eyes adjusted, she spotted something. A movement in the corner. In the shadow of a desk, a figure huddled tight, knees drawn to his chest. It was him. Tommy. Relief flooded through her, mixing with dread as she noticed his pallor, his eyes wide with fear. "Tommy," she whispered, the words tumbling from her lips like a prayer. He looked up, and recognition flooded his face. "Sarah, no time, we have to go." She knelt beside him, ready to pull him to his feet, but something caught her eye, a glint of metal in his hands. "What do you have?" she asked, curiosity mixing with alarm. It's a flash drive," he stammered, voice quaking. "I found it hidden in the office. They're after it." Her heart sank. It wasn't just about their safety. It was about secrets that could change everything. The stakes were much higher than she realized. Before she could process the implications, heavy footsteps thundered outside the room. They were coming.
Panic surged through her veins again. "We have to move, now." Tommy scrambled to his feet, and they both rushed toward the door, hearts pounding in sync. Just as they reached for the handle, the door swung open with a violent crash, revealing the tattooed man, eyes wild and menacing. "Got you," he snarled, framing them in the darkness. The fear in Tommy's eyes mirrored her own. "Run," Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging as she pushed Tommy aside, ready to face the man between them and their escape. Could she fight her way to freedom? Would they survive this clash against the darkness? The moment was frozen in time, hanging by a fragile thread as the two worlds collided. What would happen next? Was this the end, or was there a chance to escape, to pull her brother back into the light? The choice loomed before them, fight or flight. But as the weight of their situation pressed down, would they find strength within themselves they didn't know they had? Sarah's heart raced, a violent drum against her ribs as she faced the tattooed man who loomed like a menacing shadow in the doorway. His eyes glinted with an intensity that betrayed a predatory instinct, and fear rushed through her veins. But it was no time to back down, not now, not when Tommy was counting on her.
"Get out of our way!" she shouted, using every ounce of bravery she could muster. Tommy stood behind her, fear etched into his features, clutching the flash drive like a lifeline. With a furious growl, the man lunged forward. Sarah reacted instinctively, grabbing Tommy's arm and pulling him to the side just as the man swung. The blow missed, crashing against the wall. It felt like a warning shot, a declaration that the stakes had just risen. "Go!" she yelled, pushing Tommy toward the window. The flash of blue light from the police cars outside danced across their faces, offering a sliver of hope. They had to escape, fast. With no time for hesitation, she sprinted to the window, heart pounding in sync with Tommy's footsteps behind her. As they reached it, the tattooed man righted himself, all menace and fury. "You can't run from this," he shouted, scrabbling back for leverage. "Climb!" Sarah commanded. Tommy may have been physically larger, but she guided him with an urgency born of love and fear. They hoisted themselves through the window just before a fist smashed against the frame, the sound reverberating like an explosion in the still air. They tumbled onto the rain-soaked ground outside, the pounding rain washing over them like a cascade of hope. "This way!" she shouted, glancing back at the warehouse as shadows danced behind the shattered glass. The chaos within still roiled, but they were moments away from freedom. Together, they dashed toward a nearby alley, breaths coming fast as the adrenaline propelled them forward. Just as they turned the corner, Sarah caught sight of Ben waiting at the end of the street, eyes wide with concern. "Sarah, tell me!" he yelled, relief flooding his features as they sprinted toward him. "There's no time," Sarah urged, glancing back as they hurried in Ben's direction. "We were being followed." "Did you get anything?" he asked, panic still laced in his voice. Tommy lifted the drive, its shiny surface glimmering in the light. "I found it hidden in the office. They're after it." And they... Swift footsteps echoed behind them. The tattooed man emerged from the alley at the edge, eyes fixed in fury. "You think you can just walk away?" A wave of cold fear threatened to pull Sarah down, but her heart ignited with resolve. "Not today," she shouted, feeling the urgency solidify into courage. "They're not just after the flash drive," Tommy managed to say, still catching his breath. "There are lives at stake. I overheard them talking about silencing anyone who stood in their way." The tattooed man took another step closer, and in that moment, Sarah felt an echo of fear that reminded her of the night at the gala, the vulnerability of standing alone. But now, they weren't alone. Ben stepped forward, his presence a barrier between them. "If you want them, you'll have to go through me." His voice was strong, conviction launching from his core. The man faltered for just a moment, thrown off balance by the opposing force before him. It was just enough time for Tommy to rethink their next move. "We can't fight him alone." "Don't worry," Sarah said, determination strengthening her convictions. "We're not alone anymore." And with those words, she turned to face the darkness behind them, eyes burning with defiance. In the distance, more sirens echoed. They could feel the world shifting. The truth was rising like the tide, no longer hidden under the shadows of secrecy. "Let's get out of here," Ben urged again. "We need to tell someone about what we found. More people need to know what's really happening." And as they turned to run, the tattooed man lunged, this time not with the fierceness of a hunter, but the desperation of someone who only realized too late that his grasp was slipping. Sarah raced down the street, her heart beating a rhythm of hope, the fierce tide of change surging within her. The three of them ran, united by purpose, flickering like flames igniting in the darkness. They would expose the truth together. They would protect one another. They would rewrite their narratives and reclaim their voices, not just for themselves, but for all who came before them and all who would follow. And in one crucial moment, as they stepped into the light of the street where sirens blared and voices carried, Sarah turned back, glancing at the looming warehouse one last time. No longer an oppressive force, it transformed into a memory, a choice, a battle that would forever shape their futures. Together, she whispered, feeling the warmth of her companions beside her. Through fear, uncertainty, and darkness, they would emerge into a dawn of bravery, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. As they sprinted toward the safety of the police ahead, a new chapter would unfold, one guided not just by secrets, but by truth, courage, and the unwavering strength of community. Anyone could be brave, anyone could rise, and today, as the rain fell like a cascading promise, they were living proof of that undeniable strength. Now go forth, and if you want to keep following the incredible stories that inspire, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these transformations going. Comment down below your thoughts and feelings about this ending, what it meant to you. And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Every second counts in spreading hope and courage. Thank you for your support.